All right, so welcome to Using Robotics for Social Emotional Learning and Enrichment for Summer. We've invited 3 guests to show off some wonderful resources that we highly recommend for engaging students in meaningful learning over the summer, and a great investment for your program during the school year if you choose to take some of these things and make them available to your classrooms. So our first presenter is Jason Innes. He's the Director of Curriculum Training and Product Management at Kibo Lab Robotics. His email is here, and we will share the presentation with you, as well as a PDF of his presentation from today. So Jason, I will give you control of the screen, and we are very happy to have you here.
All right. Thank you, Diane. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to join my compatriots who also make some amazing resources, and I'm happy they'll be sharing theirs as well. So Kibo is the first or the resource that I'm here to talk about. Kibo is a product of our company, Kibo Lab Robotics. Kibo is a robot. It's designed to introduce engineering, coding, and sort of STEAM engagement for pre-K through 2nd grade or so. We can go a little bit older with some of our add-on materials, but it really was designed with those early learners in mind. Kibo is special because although it's a sort of full-featured robotics and coding platform, it's also entirely screen-free. So there's no app or computer or iPad or anything involved. Children are engaging with the physical robot and physical manipulatives that they use to code the robot. It's also designed for kind of open-ended, playful learning and craft and art integration. So children build onto the robot with familiar classroom arts and crafts materials. And that's a big part of the imagination play and the cross-curricular connections. It's also easy to learn, both for children and for their teachers, which is important because most early childhood teachers didn't get into it to teach computer science. So we want it to be friendly and approachable for everybody. So Kibo Lab is, we exist just to make and distribute and support the Kibo robot. We exist because of an NSF grant received by our co-founder and chief scientist, Professor Marina Bears. She's the chair of the Elliott Pearson School at Tufts. She's also an associate professor of computer science. And her interests and the work of her research group, the DevTech Lab at Tufts, really exist at that intersection of supporting our child development goals as educators, as well as supporting children's creative engagement with technology. So she and her team developed Scratch Junior, which is a really wonderful iPad-based sort of animation, storytelling, coding tool. But during their work in Scratch Junior, they realized that young children would really benefit by keeping this entire experience of coding and engaging with technology based in the physical world, the physical classroom and concrete manipulatives. So that led them into research into robotics. And eventually that led to the design of the Kibo robot. So Kibo is, it's a robot, again, designed for young children. Each of those parts you see there are kind of separate attachments that each have their own function, like a sound sensor, a light bulb, a distance sensor, the wheels and motors. Children assemble all of those parts. So they're engaging with the physical object of the robot, learning the function of the parts and adding the ones they want to give the robot the capabilities that they want. But how we control those capabilities, of course, is with code, with programming. So rather than coding the robot in a computer environment, what Dr. Bears and her team developed were these physical manipulatives, these wooden blocks, where each block represents one instruction for the robot to follow, one step in the sequence that children create when they create a program for Kibo. So children literally assemble a sequence out of these wooden blocks and then allow the robot to read the story that they've created by scanning these barcodes using a barcode scanner that's built right into the front of the robot. So that way, both the coding and giving the program to the robot and then watching the robot act out the program, all of that happens in the physical environment of the classroom with no computers. So I mentioned that the robot is reading the code kind of like a story. And that's a sort of fundamental metaphor we use throughout our curriculum. And it's how one of the ways that we engage imagination play into all of this. We want the children to turn the robot into a character or an animal or a vehicle of their own invention, and then create a story to represent the actions of that character. So in this case, we're not just creating a program to move a robot around the room, we're creating a story about our fire truck that honks its horn to warn the people to get out of the way, then flashes its siren red and then white, and then drives forward to help the people in the town. So that keeping that story in mind is how the children can frame their goals and their creative experience of coding. Uh, the fire truck becomes a fire truck, not just in their imagination though, but also through physical decoration. So we have various platforms that children can use to build onto the robot. The platforms can spin around or stay stationary, or children can just tape, construction paper cutouts right to the surface of the robot. We really want them to kind of mess around with it. And that's, of course, an important part of the experience in the early childhood classroom too. So the children are turning the robot into the character to act out the story that they're telling with their code. So I'm going to share this really short video that kind of helps you, picture what all this looks like. And I'll just sort of talk over it. There's not any sound. So the children are choosing the parts that they want to attach, even down to the wheels and motors. The children engage with all of these devices. They're adding sensors to the robot into any of these attachment points to sense things like distance, sound, and light, or to output light and sound. And then we create our sequence by attaching these wooden blocks. Now here it's just a simple one-step sequence asking the robot to shake with those important begin and end blocks framing the program. We scan each block in one by one, and then when the robot executes the program, it follows the sequence the children created. Here, the art platform that I mentioned is spinning. So that's where we can attach familiar arts and crafts materials, just paper cutouts or paper mache constructions, or just a drawing that the children do, in order to put the robot into all of these imaginative contexts. So what do those contexts kind of look like in the classroom? Well, Kibo might become a dancer. So if we're learning about the cultures and festivals and music of other parts of the world, maybe Kibo becomes a dancer wearing the costume of that festival. And then the program is getting the robot and its friends moving together to the music of the dance. Kibo might become a bowling ball that we program with movement commands to reach the end of the bowling alley. In that case, it's a fun game, it's an engaging activity, but it's also a way of engaging with fundamental math standards, like using non-standard units of measurement to measure a space like the classroom. Kibo's forward block becomes a unit of measurement, and the children have to estimate how many of these steps it will take to reach the pins. They test it, they revise their program. They're really engaging in some fundamental math work there. Kibo might become a space shuttle exploring an environment that the children have created. This image actually comes from a project done at a Baltimore City school where they were learning about the work of Mae Jemison, the first female African-American astronaut on the space shuttle. And they created a path through the whole solar system that they made with sort of appropriately colored construction paper balls. They charted out their course through the solar system and then programmed Kibo to move through it. So in this case, the lesson was a math integrated social studies project-based lesson. Coding just became one other way that the children were exploring these concepts. Kibo might become a character in a story. So if there's a book that the children are reading, rather than having the children act out the story, like in a reader's theater kind of activity, we could have the robot become the character in the story, and the program represents, again, the sequence of events in the plot of the story. So I wanted to dive a little deeper into that example because we are thinking about sort of learning loss and helping students recover with these enrichment activities. So I wanted to show that there are these authentic connections to cross-curricular standards in activities like this. So when we get children to use a robot to reenact a scene from a book, we're really engaging authentically with these literacy standards. We're getting children to talk about their understanding of the sequence of events in the story. We're getting them to identify and describe characters. They maybe are building the setting, again, with arts and crafts materials for their robot to act out the sequence in. But as we're doing that, we're also engaging with important computer science standards. So we're working in collaborative groups and taking on roles to engage in a design process. We're creating sequences and programs to express an idea. So this idea that we can support these sort of traditional, important, foundational core standards while also allowing children to create with code is an important theme. And these ideas are all sort of wrapped up in our curriculum and all of the materials that Kibo Lab provides to teachers. So we have a core curriculum that's 60 hours of sequenced lesson plans. These are aligned with the Computer Science Teachers Association standards, which are the foundation of Maryland's computer science standards, as well as really being written for kind of the non-technology integrator expert classroom teacher to use comfortably. We have a range of supplemental materials as well. Again, the scope and sequence in our curriculum is really based on both Dr. Bears's research as well as the Computer Science Teachers Association standards. So I want to just, I know I'm sort of taking more time than allotted, so I'm just going to move quickly and point you, you can access the recording of this or the, the downloadable slides if you're interested in more of the background of the research, but Dr. Bears has a number of books that all relate to creative ways of integrating coding into the classroom. So rather than spend a lot of time on those, I just wanted to sort of share this last point and just reinforce this idea that coding isn't just sort of an enrichment activity. It's really a way to allow children to engage with in fundamental new creative ways with topics that are important sort of every day across the classroom. So whether that's using sort of the movement and measurement with the robot to engage with math, storytelling and creation of narrative to engage with ELA, science, we can model systems like animal behavior with our animated robots. And all of this allows us other ways of reaching our student population and tying into their other interests like imagination play, movement, and collaboration to help them recover some of the learning that was lost over this difficult year. So again, thank you for the opportunity to kind of share about Kibo. It's a platform that was designed based on a lot of research into early childhood and how young children learn best with these concepts, with concrete manipulatives, physical engagement with their peers and with the classroom around them. And I would welcome anyone who's interested to get in touch with me. I'd be happy to share more information at any time about Kibo and how teachers can bring it into their schools. So thank you.
Thank you very much.